Solar Panel Podcast live here on YouTube, or if you are listening wherever podcasts are available. My name is Tim Tompkins. Joining us, Mr. Dave King.
Hey, though.
Okay, and Greg Esposito. How you guys doing?
Oh, holy.
Oh, I love it. I did that as if you could see me, and half of our listeners are just on a podcast. So, hi there, listeners.
Also, Dave, worth noting that the way that this YouTube works is that it always shows Greg, and it shows either you or me. So
I know Greg is such a narcissist.
Not today.
Everything
it's all
is about
us.
Greg.
It's all three of us because my equipment isn't working the same. They updated the program, and I can't get that other way to work. So it's all three of us on the screen today. So screw you.
That's actually not so bad, actually, because then it's not just AAG.
Well, look,
all about Greg.
We're all the size of a postage stamp.
That's true. Look at that. That doesn't look too good. And then none of us can chill out when we haven't talked recently.
You can. You're just going to be on camera chilling out. So when Tim inevitably disappears during part of the episode, now the viewers are going to know that Tim just decided to walk out on the show. So.
Wait, you guys have noticed that?
Yeah, every time.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Legitimately, you guys can chat for a while, and sometimes I don't talk for 10 minutes. So I'll hear you two going at it, and I'm like, let me go get a cup of coffee.
You just don't want to talk. We understand.
Hello to Felix in the YouTube chat. Appreciate you guys joining us. So there's been a lot of chatter about different ways that the NBA could resume their season. And one of the predominant ideas right now is the NBA could host the rest of the season at Disney. You have Keith Smith, who cited the on-site housing and facility capabilities as two key reasons as why an arrangement like that could work, not to mention that they also have multiple courts. Orlando, don't forget that pretty recently has hosted NBA Summer League for a while. There's a lot of possibilities and a lot of reasons why the NBA could host the rest of the regular season at Disney. One of the caveats to that is you can't. I mean, you can do whatever you want, I suppose, but telling the NBA players that they have to leave their families for, up to 3 months is pretty much a non-starter to make that happen. Disney does have those on-site housing arrangements where they could host a number of members of the players' families. So Brian Windhorst recently released an idea where the NBA could finish out the full 82 regular game season by hosting 4 games a day in adjacent courts, pretty similar to how the Summer League goes down in Vegas. 4 games a day in each one of those courts, and that would also allow for 0 back-to-backs for the NBA finishing out the regular season, and they could finish it out within 30 days, and that they could also have a full round of playoffs with no days off for not for the teams, but just in general, no days off for games, and that would take 55 days to complete. Like I said, the NBA would have to host the players and their families at Disney. Here's the thing. The NBA has found a way to where they could buy 15,000 coronavirus tests, which is what they estimate they would need to be able to do this safely, from a private company. The ethics behind that, however, are that the NBA would be doing this while regular citizens might not have the opportunity to get a coronavirus test if they needed it. So the NBA would have to go against the publicity of, you can play sports while regular people can't even get a COVID-19 test.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, 2 things. The Orlando Disneyland or Disney World plan makes a lot of sense because the NBA is already in bed with Disney in terms of their TV contract with ABC and ESPN. And so it makes a lot of sense that they do that. Disney is going to want that because they need the programming on those networks. So they'll bend over backwards to figure out a way to make it work. And it's not like those hotels or those gyms at the Wild World of Sports are being used at all for anything. So from a business standpoint, you got a winner there. That's gonna make total sense. Probably significantly more than the Vegas plan that was floated, especially with Las Vegas looking, or at least the mayor, in Vegas looking to try to open that city as fast as possible. So from that standpoint, I think it makes a lot of sense. And now you bring up the ethical question in terms of the testing. And I understand where you're coming from on that, Tim. And it is slightly uncomfortable to think there are numerous people in this country that can't gain access to a test, but that a league like the NBA has it readily available because they have the money to purchase it. But I think there's a simple way, maybe not simple, but a way to get around and mitigate the PR problems with that by buying 30,000 tests and donating the other 15,000 to the highest impacted areas that are struggling to have tests. So the NBA not only serves their own purposes, but then also serves a more altruistic purpose by helping other people get tests that they may not otherwise get. Because if they can access 15,000 from a private company, I'm pretty sure that same private company or another would be able to access another 15,000 for the right amount of money. And we all know the NBA has that amount of money, whatever it may be. I think that's the way you get around any potential PR problem.
So you're saying that the 400, let's say 1,500 well, okay. So I'm having trouble with this, first of all, this 15,000 number. You should be testing everybody every day. And you've got 450 players, plus you've got probably at least twice that in staff, or at least, doubling that in staff. So let's say 1,000 people. That's just 15 days worth of tests. So obviously, I think they're going to need more than 15,000. I don't know where that came from. Because you really should be doing it every day, because as soon as you take a test, you could get the virus 5 minutes later. So you should be taking a test every day coming in. But let's say it's 15,000 per minute. 15,000 tests for about 1,000 people, right? So that's actually 15-to-1 ratio. Greg, your suggestion is put 15,000 into circulation in Orlando. How many people live in Orlando?
Well, I'm not saying Orlando.
No. How many people live in Orlando, Tim? Was it 3 million?
What? I have
4 million?
No idea. Not
Probably 3 or 4 million people. 15. That'd be like a 1 to a million. I mean, come on, or 1 to 100,000. So 15-to-1 versus 1 to 100,000. They need to do a representative number, which obviously they're not going to be able to do, a representative number of tests for everybody else to make it actually worth it. But you know what? This is a money country, and everything is capitalism. So it doesn't ultimately matter if the NBA buys 15,000 tests. There are other tests available for the highest bidder for other people. So, if you have a good connection, you could pay, your own 100, 200, $500 per test and get your own test if you want to. If you know the right people, get in with the right crowd, and you can buy yourself as many tests as you want to. The problem is, it's easier for the NBA to do it than it is for Joe Schmo. So I'm just not a big fan of this, although it's just a drop in the bucket as far as the tests are concerned. There are a lot of tests being made available, starting to be made available. The problem still is there aren't enough for people to get it without symptoms. There still is. You have to have symptoms first, because there's not enough.
Depending on where you are here in not, I don't actually live in Jacksonville, but this closest city to me in Jacksonville, tests are available for anybody that wants them publicly now.
Really?
Yep.
Arizona, we still, I don't even think we've topped 100,000 tests total in over a month. So while our numbers are low, part of that is because our testing is low.
But is it worth it? I mean, is it worth it for the NBA to say, regardless of, maybe Greg's idea would work, maybe it wouldn't, but the NBA chugs forward and they say, you know what, we're going to do games. We have the ability to get these tests. We are a business. We're going to do
If you can completely
is it worth it?
Bubbleize the setup, then it could work. You put the same group of people.
Is it worth the PR? Is what I mean. Is it worth
it's worth the PR. People will forget about the tests as soon as the news story is over, and even in this extended news cycle right now, you're probably talking 2 or 3 days. Yes, they'll get over the PR hit. People will be excited about watching games, and no one's going to be talking about the tests. In fact, by the time actual stuff happens with games, people are going to be clamoring for the NBA players to get more tests, not less. even if it's private industry. People, the scale is going to get lost on everybody. So I think, yeah, absolutely, if they do it. The key is safety. If you can completely bubbleize and nobody goes to Orlando to visit, here's the problem.
Well, Disney's
Orlando's going to get what?
But Disney's basically its own city. Like,
no, I get it.
There's like,
but if people are storming the capitals, they're going to be storming
right.
Disneyland too, Disney World too, to try to get at these players. You cannot expect people who are bored as hell to ignore the fact that there are 450 NBA players in one place. And there is no such thing as building the wall around Disney World so people can't even see or try to catch glimpses. There's going to be so many people visiting Orlando, flying into Florida to actually try to catch glimpses of these guys, that is where your danger starts to happen.
Well, and you can't tell me one of these players. I mean, if you have every NBA player right in there, and all of a sudden Orlando opens their bars or something, right? You can't tell me one of these guys isn't going to try to sneak out or something. That's where the danger is, because the first time,
and then he brings it back to the bubble.
Yeah, the first time you get if you have another Rudy Gobert situation, right, it shuts the whole thing down again. Like, you're not just...
Well, I don't know. They've talked about this, Greg, that they have to be willing to have sick people and not shut down.
But
right.
the problem is...
You'd have to.
You'd
have to, 100%. You couldn't do it otherwise. You would have to say, even if somebody tests positive, everybody has to be willing to keep playing, because otherwise it's a moot point. Because you're one person inevitably will get it. You can't be in Game 4 of the NBA Finals.
Imagine being this team where the one who gets infected is one of your important players, and they're not out for one game; they're out for 2 full weeks, which is the entire series. So you get any team, they lose one important player, they're done for that whole series, and then it's a tainted result as well. So, and here's the thing with this, the thing that's so scary about this, is that you don't have to be the one that broke the rules to be a victim of it.
Yeah. Right?
If this could just be like, not just, I'm sorry for the context here, but if this were like HIV, you did it to yourself. You don't breathe on somebody and give them something like that. But this is just a pass on by breathing virus, where you can be perfectly rule follower and still be a victim.
So the question though is really, would you rather have no result? Because there's not a way to have the NBA season unless they agree to this, right?
Yeah.
There's just not. So you can either have no result, or you can have a possibility of a tainted result, and those are your options.
Let me throw this out, and the reason I think to me, a huge reason they're actually going to do this, whether it's safe or not, and they're going to accept sicknesses and all that stuff and tainted results, is that there is, and I didn't do enough research to be able to write a story on this yet, but there is a clause in the CBA, or maybe it's the contracts with the TV networks or something. I think it's the TV networks, where you have to play 70 games, or their entire you play 70 games, they have to keep paying, and the deal is valid. But nobody's making any money right now. So guess what? If the TV networks can get out of these contracts and renegotiate, the renegotiation is going to be much lower on total pay, which hurts the NBA again. NBA is already being hurt, but at least they're still getting their TV money. So when Adam Silver says league revenue is basically zero, okay, yeah, maybe on a weekly basis, but they still got the billions in TV money. They're okay, as long as those contracts are still
in their jerseys and the league pass that everyone paid for.
Basically zero
give me
crap.
A break.
No one's given any refunds.
Right.
What teams were starting to do is like give credits for future games plus 10% or something like that for future games, but they're not giving cash back. So the revenue has already. That's like saying, after you already got paid on Thursday, I got no revenue on Friday. Oh, yeah, because you already got your money on Thursday for the 2 weeks. So, but it is going to be a huge loss to the league for this year not to have those daily, obviously, the game receipts for the walk-ups, and some of the, obviously, the playoff revenue is probably I know it's an outsized portion of their overall income for the league as well as for those individual teams. But the worst outcome could be that they lose those TV contracts and have to renegotiate at a 30, 40, 50% discount. That would be devastating.
There is no way that those networks walk away from the TV contracts, because if you
the networks are losing tons of money too. They're going to try to renegotiate. I bet they will.
But they realize that they're not gonna nuclear option and opt out of their contracts, because they realize the one thing that will guarantee them revenue in the near future is live sports again. And we've seen, look at the NFL draft having its highest ratings ever, and the WNBA draft having its highest ratings ever. People are going to flock to whatever live sports come back in huge numbers. So no network's going to walk away, because they know that's the saving grace at some point. They're going to recoup money at that point, because advertisers, if there is any, whatever ad spend is left is going to be put into live sports, because that's what's going to have huge numbers. Because we're looking at, in all likelihood, no real new movie releases, or no major movie releases this year. Most things have been moved to 2021. Fall shows aren't going to start on time because nobody can film right now, and this is when over the next few months they film the beginnings of those seasons. So there's a good chance come August or July or August, whenever they can safely start sports again, it's the only thing on TV that's new. So nobody's walking away from these contracts. They may not have to pay
those in live reality shows.
But like it's not gonna happen. The one thing that's concerning to me is if you create a bubble, right, it can easily turn into the reverse and become a petri dish real quick too. So if it's one guy, or they all agree, well, we have to keep playing even if somebody gets sick, that one person becomes multiple people.
If you do contact tracing quarantine, the entire team forfeits a game. The series.
So there's all sorts of weird things. The testing, I think people get over, because the honest fact is the NBA's already done significant amounts of testing before they were even available to the average people. I mean, look at how fast they tested all of the Utah Jazz and all the Oklahoma City Thunder right after that Rudy Gobert incident. When they found out the Lakers had been in contact, they got those people in Toronto. Like, it was rapid in the way that they got tests for their players. So nobody's kidding themselves that this is some even playing field. The bigger question for me is, and not to get political here, because I really don't want to go down that road, but it's not really the NBA's duty to get the United States tests. That's kind of the government's job, not the NBA's job. So if the NBA is protecting their investment in their people, I can't hate on them because the system is rigged in favor of people with money, and the league's got plenty of it. So I don't feel overly bad, to the point that, they're losing all this money. Well, maybe this teaches the league and the owners to better prepare for situations where there could be financial issues like this. Maybe it's a wake-up call to actually have backup reserves so this doesn't become a catastrophic problem, so you don't have to cry poor at some point, because there's enough money pouring into each of these sports leagues that you can have some kind of smart rainy day fund if you skim a little off the top each year. If the salary cap doesn't increase quite as much, or whatever the case may be, I guarantee in the next CBA for all these leagues, NBA included, there will be a negotiation on a way to prevent this in the future, because this is a new reality. Once it's happened, you don't put the genie back in the bottle. People are going to think about this when negotiating collective bargaining agreements.
So I do want to take a minute to thank one of our listeners who supports the show monthly, Justin Sexton. Thank you so much. We do really appreciate your continued support, especially now. Coach Fallen, founder in the YouTube chat, said that he is just here for the hard-hitting analysis of the Booker and Kendall Jenner relationship. Will they, won't they, or have they already? Which I must admit, I gave so few shits about when it was the only thing being talked about this week on Suns Twitter. I mean,
the Booker Kendall Jenner thing.
Will they?
My
yes.
God.
Have they? Yes. That's your hard hitting analysis. And now I'm much less worried that Devin Booker is going to catch COVID and God knows what he may come in contact with.
Whatever else he can catch, he doesn't give it to other people just by breathing it.
Hopefully not. We haven't seen anything quite like that. But yeah, I don't care. Devin Booker could date whoever he wants. I really don't care. He could date Kelly Oubre for all I care. I really don't care who Devin Booker dates. He's an adult.
Even remotely.
No, not
I
even in the
don't care
least.
so much.
Now, if they had said, well, they drove up the Grand Canyon and Devin Booker pushed Kendall Jenner into the Grand Canyon, then I care because it's a legal issue and he's done something horrible. But just because
you would care enough to search for the video on Twitter.
Just because they're dating, I couldn't care less. Like, what difference does it make that Devin Booker is dating anybody? Like, unless he starts dating DeAndre Ayton's mom and it causes issues with the team. Or we get a situation like in Dallas back in the early 90s.
Hey, that's gross. I've met DeAndre Ayton's mom. Please don't say that again.
Hey, no judgment to anybody. Whatever you love, all right? But you look at it, and unless it's a situation like the Mavericks with Jason Kidd, Jamal Mashburn, and Jim Jackson, where they all were, I think it was Tony Braxton, if I remember correctly.
Fighting over the same.
Yeah, they were all fighting over her.
Even this last season, Greg, there was pictures of Kelly Oubre leaving Kendall Jenner's place after Devin Booker had stopped seeing her, and there was never any rift on it. Who cares? They don't care right now.
Like, honestly, more power. Eduardo in the chat, have you heard of the Kardashian curse? What worse could happen to us? Have you seen the last 10 years? Like, we've got plenty of curses here. The Kardashian curse does not scare me. We're the longest running franchise in the NBA without a championship. There's nothing about the Kardashian curse that scares me in the least, all right? You can't do worse to us than we've done to ourselves here in Phoenix.
Coach in the chat says maybe Dave would have a pro dating.
Shut up.
True.
Somehow, some way, I think Devin's got me beat.
I don't think so, man. Not when Devin's your age. I mean, seriously, Dave.
Not in volume. I don't think in volume he's got you beat. You've got years.
Dude, don't be even intimating that. It's not volume. It's quality.
I didn't say it was bad quality in the volume. I'm
Dude,
just saying
quality over quantity.
At your age.
Listen. Let's get off this right here. All right. So next topic: if the NBA expanded and you could only protect 2 players on the Phoenix Suns, not named Devin Booker or DeAndre Ayton, who would you pick? Let's start with you, Greg.
Oh, who would I pick? So I got
2 players.
I protect Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. Because then you got your defensive guy, you've got your 3-point specialist, and I assume since you're saying not Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, I get to keep them. That they're already safe. We've locked them away so the Seattle expansion team can't get their hands on them. I assume they're safe. So, I think those are the 2 guys because you look at that and then you've got 4 pieces of the kind of a team you need to make a run eventually at some point as they mature. So I keep Mikal and I keep Cam Johnson. Those would be my 2 that I protect.
Those are pretty good selections. Tim, you go second. Who do you protect?
Dave's saying, I have no idea right now. I need some time.
No, I do. I want to hear
Tim's.
It's
obviously Mikal Bridges, right? I think that if the question were 1 player, I still think I'd go with Mikal Bridges. At this point, it just really becomes a toss-up between Jalen LeCue and Frank Kaminsky.
Seriously? Well, we did love Frank in our grading, so Frank
Dude,
was
and
number
Jalen
3 on my
McHugh,
list.
man, I enjoyed watching that kid play ball. I tell you what, I just I wanted him to get more minutes. I believe in that kid.
Look, I
So.
wanted him to be good in the G League. Let's start low. Let's start at the minimum. I wanted him to actually do good.
Here's
in
the
G
thing:
League.
as long as we're gonna lose, let me lose watching really entertaining basketball, and I love to watch that kid play.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny. Okay, so you've got Mikal and then Frank LeCue. That's who you're taking. Okay. Man, mashing up Frank with LeCue, that is a great mix because then you get the long range shooting of Frank, you get a little bit more height, and you have all the crazy athleticism of Jalen LeCue. That is like actually, if those two could be combined into a single player, that'd be a pretty damn good player.
You get a 7-foot point guard that's obsessed with denim. I'm all in. Let's see it.
Look, man, Frank is a treasure. I was actually going to name Frank jokingly as one of my two, but now that Tim did it, I think I can. Let's see, Dario, probably not Dario. Dario's Cowlick, maybe. I really think, obviously, Mikal. I mean, there's no question it's got to be Mikal. The reason you wouldn't do Rubio is because you can get Rubio. You can keep Rubio even though it's unprotected. So if you're only really protecting guys that you don't want to lose, I kind of like Greg's idea of adding Cam to that. But I'm gonna go with Kelly Oubre because I really think Mikal and Kelly are the other two most important people for the Suns' image and their persona and their fight and their spirit as a team. Even though Kelly's only under contract for one more year, that's just simply, I think, a matter of time. The only reason Kelly would be let go to go to another team is if they treat him like a Channing Frye, where they just seriously underbid just so he will leave, which I don't think this regime would do. I think James got lucky. James Jones got lucky with Kelly becoming such a good player in this system. As limited as he still is a really good player in this system and spirit on the team. I know James didn't give up a ton to get him. R.I.P. Trevor Ariza. But I think James knows the value of Kelly Oubre in this team. And as long as the price tag isn't too high, over $20 million, Kelly's going to stay a while. So I would keep Kelly and Mikal.
Let's go to the chat. Eduardo said Bridges and Rubio. Felix said Mikal Bridges and Kelly Oubre. MT said Oubre and Rubio. And Coach said Rubio and Bridges. So between seven of us, 6 said Bridges.
Yeah, no. What's really good is that right now, all those guys are actually producing. Like if we had done this question a year ago, 2 years ago, we'd have to pick amongst guys who haven't even produced yet. We're picking on potential and hope. I mean, Marquise Chris would have been, and Dragan Bender would have been the fight over, should they be the two you keep besides the team's 2 best players?
Should they have held on to Chris?
God.
No.
Look, you know what? Here, let me put it this way. If you like Jalen LeCue's chances of succeeding without, learning skills and being incubated properly with this franchise the way it is with James Jones as the GM and Monty Williams as the coach, then you would like Marquise Chris's chances in this franchise with a fresh start. Bringing him back, no. It's too much history. It's like going back to an ex-girlfriend. You just can't do it. You can dally with it, but you can't do it. So I think you can't at this point bring Chris back. It's just too much bad blood, or just bad memories and all this. He could regress. It's not good for him, even though it's a better environment. It's not good for the Suns because the fan base is going to remember the old. So no, I wouldn't do that. However, if it was a fresh Marquise Chris, I think he could have thrived much better in this environment than he did in the old one 2 or 3 years ago, and then he would be our Jalen LeCue.
Bender come back. You can blame it all on McGee.
Oh,
I still want
man,
Bender back.
I forget which article it was the other day. But somebody was arguing that Bender was better than would have been better than Dario Saric this year, and I just feel really bad for Dario, man.
No.
That's like such an insult. No.
Shows,
Bender never would have
underrated.
approached anything. Yeah.
Yes.
Just because
Dario
he's a
did the
rumbling, bumbling, stumbling guy doesn't mean he wasn't productive and made all the right plays. He did.
So our friend Flex contributed to a couple of ideas that we're going to talk about to round out
Flex
the
from
show
Jersey.
today.
Let's be clear. I messaged Flex last night and said, I am out of ideas. I am tapped. Can you help produce this thing?
Flex.
Because Flex is a wealth of random Suns
Let's
questions.
use Flex as a temporary sidebar here.
And the first one.
No, Tim. Let's use Flex as a temporary sidebar here to go to the Thursday night solar jam fanning party that we had on Zoom the other night. So I mean, it was genius for about an hour, and then it degraded into less than genius. But I had this grand idea that we would just share our Zoom link out to have a solar party on Thursday night. I just put it on Twitter, open. Didn't even DM people. I just put it on Twitter. It worked awesome for about an hour because we got about 25 random great Suns fans that were really into it for being Suns fans and sharing things about the Suns. And it was the biggest Zoom I've been on. 25 people at once. It was 20 at once, but there was a rotation, a few people at the bottom there. And then the bad people came because they found the link on Twitter, and then it degraded and stuff. But man, for an hour it was golden. And what's great is I heard later that half a dozen of them stayed on for like 5 hours on that party. So
really?
Good for them. Yeah, not with the randos, but with eventually the randos went away, and then just the fans stayed.
So what were the
randos
doing though?
We can't even mention that audio.
Well, there was we can. There was some nasty sex act pictures, and there was some random drawings of things, and then just girls came on just to hang out and stare at the camera and wait to be flirted with, which I don't think anyone did because we're basketball nerds. I felt like a chaperone, and I actually got out. Tim, you would have loved it. You need to stay up when I Flex is in Jersey. And he was on this thing until 5 a.m. Flex, you are awesome.
I do close to 8 Zoom calls a day. I do the show with you guys. The workouts are now virtual over Zoom. I don't want to do another Zoom meeting, honestly, for the rest of my life. I think it's awesome. I'm just really over Zoom meetings. But
this was totally different. This is totally different. This was awesome. Greg, you were on there. Tell us.
It was a lot of fun. I love that Dave didn't even make it difficult to Zoom bomb this thing. Dave just went, "Please, internet, I'm welcoming you to make this a complete chaos. Here's the link."
I wanted to see how many Suns fans we could get on there. If we could limit, if there could be a qualifier question on Zoom, tell us who started in the 1993 finals for the Suns, then it would have been great. If people had to answer a question correctly to get into the Zoom, then I'd put out the link to anyone and everyone, and then we could do it in the playoffs, and there'd be 250 little thumbnails. Brrr. That'd be awesome if we could do that one year. But I don't know if Zoom allows for qualifying questions. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was cool to see everybody was kind of showing off their favorite piece of memorabilia, those kind of things. And
there's some pretty awesome memorabilia out there.
For me, it was great to be on a call with John Bloom and Flex. It brought me back to the post-game days. I miss my conversations with those two gentlemen. They got me through many a rough season late at night after many a rough game. So that was a lot of fun to do that and get to meet the Suns Jam Session guys. I think that's their podcast name now.
They are the kings of renaming podcasts, so they're on their third name now. Now it's the Suns Jam Session. So John Boyda and Matthew Lissy were on there. John Bloom. Trayvon Edwards got in there, and we got a bunch of really just really cool Suns fans from the Twitter world on there as well, and it was really good to see faces with names.
PLR was in the room too. Yeah.
PLR, yeah,
Another
Paul
guy I
Richardson.
hadn't seen in a while. So.
Yeah.
So Tim, back to your question. What is our
Stay up late next
question?
time, Tim? We had some East Coasters. We had some people we had a guy from Australia.
Great. I work at 8 a.m. I'm not going to stay up until 2 o'clock. And it's so nice of you guys to invite me, but I'm not going to do it.
No
I'm
pants
not gonna, you don't have to go to sleep,
Tim.
man. Stay up all night.
Listen, so the question
there for the girls next time.
The question from Flex was one Phoenix transaction that you could do over, that being free agency or trade, what would it be? I'm going to start this off because I feel like being controversial. Luka Doncic.
You think that's controversial at this point?
Not controversial. You know we don't like talking about something that didn't happen. So yeah, I would do. Tell you what, I love DeAndre Ayton, and it's possible that he'll grow into a bigger difference maker for this team that has Devin Booker.
I love him too. I think it's great. I would still just much rather have Luka Doncic.
I would have taken Luka Doncic too.
This is so tough because there's so many of those.
But wait, that's not the transaction I'm going to use. I'm just agreeing with you, Tim. I still have a play. Go ahead, Greg.
So I don't know. This is it's so tough because there's so many of these what ifs, right? In Suns history.
So many bad transactions done.
I look at it and there's two, and I'm gonna get railed for one of these. But the first one, and it comes to mind significantly, the Rodman one in '93, where it's rumored that the Suns were close to a trade, would have been interesting. But I think it turns into a complete disaster because of Barkley. Just that team, they partied, and you put Rodman in that. I don't know if it becomes brilliant or a total mess. But that one's intriguing. Oh, I'm debating between two though right now, like that are there. I think I'm going to go with 2004, that off season. Mike D'Antoni had the relationship with Kobe. Kobe considered Phoenix, right? You change the entire fabric of everything in the NBA from that point on. If you signed Kobe here, you would have had Kobe, you would have Marion, you would have had Amari, and there's a potential. I doubt that it would happen because I'm not sure they had the cap space, but you might have been able to add Nash as well. You win a championship if you had Kobe there. As much as it would pain me because there's all sorts of things, but that one, if that happens, it destroys the Lakers at that point. It likely wins the Suns a championship. It 7 seconds or less never really happens, but all of this, everything changes at that point. So that's probably the one I go with. There's one other, but that's probably the one I go with.
But how would having a do-over change it?
Well, because so I'm saying they signed Kobe there, right? So then it takes Kobe off the Lakers. They don't win those titles with Gasol.
Right, but I mean that's not really a do-over. They would have signed Kobe if Kobe had agreed, right? So this is a you could
where the Suns made the mistake, not that somebody
where
said no.
The Suns made the mistake. Oh, okay. Then it's got to be Flex is saying it in the chat, but it's got to be Joe Johnson if it's the Suns made the mistake because that's the one that completely changed the 7 seconds or less again there at the beginning of that run. If you have Joe Johnson, which you would have had him for cheap, I think he wanted 65. They offered him 55. Right?
I think it was 45 to 50. It was literally $1 million a year. He wanted 50 over 5 years. The Suns wanted 40 to give him 45 over 5 years.
It looks okay. So yeah, it's minimal money.
Yeah,
you would have had him on the cheap. You would have had Nash locked up. You would have had Amari locked up.
Right. But hindsight, okay. Let's look. I'm not defending Robert Sarver because really, what should have happened is they should have given him the max and kept him happy enough to take the max in the summer of 2005. And they still would have been able to keep the team together because assuming Robert Sarver wouldn't have cheaped out on everything else. However, the summer of 2004, I can see why you'd want to haggle with the dude. You just spent over $100 million on Nash and Quentin Richardson. Joe wants an extension in 03-04. He was one of the worst volume starters in the league. Very low efficiency and all that. And he had potential, obviously, but he hadn't proven anything, and he wanted a little bit more money than a reasonable person would want to pay. And we all know Robert Sarver is very key on not, well, we don't know Robert Sarver because sometimes he goes overboard and overpays, and other times he underpays. I think keeping him for the max in the summer of 05 is where the Suns missed out, not keeping that relationship strong.
Well, and
I would do that.
Sarver admitted that he made a mistake there, which is one of the few that he
one of the only ones he's ever admitted. Yes. Yeah. So I think that was important. I think there's several others that should be and could be do-overs. I would have found a way to keep Antonio McDyess in town as well. But then looking back on it, that wouldn't have changed much because Penny and Jason Kidd were injured too much anyway for that team to have really come around. But I just would have preferred, obviously, a healthy Antonio McDyess over the Tom Gugliotta that we ended up with. But those are the ones that jump at me. I mean, there's so many transactions in history that it could be.
Kyle in the chat said drafting Giannis and not Lynn in 2013, but that seems
super hindsight. Yep.
Right.
Obviously, we'd love Giannis for sure.
And where did Giannis get drafted again? Was it 16 or was he in the 20? As I remember.
It was outside the lottery.
Right.
15.
15. So 14 other teams are saying that right now.
For sure.
Most people though, Felix, Fabio, Coach, Fallen, all saying Joe Johnson, Fabio was saying maybe Isaiah Thomas. I think the Isaiah Thomas thing was a mistake, but one of the biggest ones, no. I mean, at the end of the day, how much of a difference would that really have made to the team? And then if we had Isaiah Thomas, if I remember correctly, we probably wouldn't have gotten Devin Booker, but
yeah, how about this?
That's the thing. That's the thing is you got to look at those. Sorry, Greg, but a lot of these transactions, you can't assume the other good things that happened after that would have still happened because the Suns would have gone different directions. And you're right. There's a few things you could have done. Like I was even going to say CJ McCollum in that 2013 draft turned out to be a hell of a lot, really worth the 5th pick. And the Suns really liked him that year, but they didn't take him. And then if they had CJ McCollum, they wouldn't have gone Devin Booker the next year. They would have gone someone that didn't turn out as good in the NBA because nobody in that 15 draft after Booker was all great shakes. So
Eduardo said Bledsoe in the 4th pick, which ended up being Josh Jackson for Kyrie Irving. I still would not have done that.
No,
I might have done that. I think that's a good suggestion in hindsight. Of course, the Suns were building at that time.
Here's one for you. You go back to the Steve Nash and the end of that whole thing. I trade him a year or two earlier. Coming off, once you decide to let Amari go, I deal Nash at that point. You get more for him. You start the rebuild faster, and you maybe avoid the 10-year slump that you wind up in, because that really is a big part of what put this team in the hole. Is they held on to that to Nash and trying to be serviceable at the end there. And wound up being a 500 team for 2 years there, where if you had just said, you know what, we're rebuilding, we accept that, and you make the deal when Nash is a little bit more valuable, maybe you avoid the 10 years that we've suffered through since then.
There's a lot of do-overs, so...
Yes.
The next one is one injury that you could undo. I'm going to start this off with Flex. He said the Danny Manning ACL injury in 94-95. reading a bunch about that. You actually had Jerry Colangelo at the time saying he came here because he felt this way, where he wanted to be an opportunity to play with a team that would contend for a championship. Then the bad news today, my response to all of that is very simple. That sacrifice will not be forgotten. And as I was just reading some of the comments from Jerry Colangelo, it really honed in the difference that period of Suns was for Suns history than now, where you had players that were literally taking discounts to come play for a team that was competing for a championship.
He took $1 million. This is Danny Manning basically at the peak of his career, right? Former number one pick. Took only $1 million to sign with the Suns because that's all the cap space they had, because he wanted to play here. And Colangelo held to his word the following year, even off the ACL injury, he paid the man. So yeah, that spoke volumes, and that's a great one, Flex, because that 93-94 team was, when Manning got injured, had the best record in the NBA, right? I think they were 37-10, maybe 36-10 when Manning got injured, and that would have been the title team, I think, out of that group, because there's no Jordan at that point. Houston's the team they got to get past. And yeah, if Joe Klein doesn't fall on Danny Manning's knee in practice, that's a whole different thing.
Oh
so
man,
that is a major one. Another one is Kevin Johnson in that 92-93 season. People forget this, but he only played, I think, 46 regular season games. That's when his hamstring injuries started to flare up and started to be an issue. I think he had a slight knee issue that year too. There was not a full strength Kevin Johnson even in the playoffs at that point. So that season, which is arguably the best in Suns history, likely plays out significantly differently if Kevin Johnson's not hurt there.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Kevin Johnson injury. As I'm thinking about the Joe Johnson injury in 2005, the orbital bone. You've got, God, there's so many injuries that have, even Steve Nash getting beat up in the 2007 series too contributed to the Suns not having a better than 2-2 tie, even at the point where there was the suspensions and all that. But the biggest one the biggest one has to be Amari Stoudemire, to me, needing microfracture after that incredible 2005 breakout, and then suddenly needing the microfracture. When he was just they were talking, Fox Sports Arizona is showing historical games, and they showed the one of the 2005 playoff games against Dallas, and they were just saying, I think it was, playoffs against Dallas, and they were saying, Bill Walton was Bill Walton's such a treasure. But back then he was a little bit more mainstream, and he was actually on the finals, not the finals call, but the playoffs call. And he was like, Amari Stoudemire, the future of the NBA, future MVP, and all this stuff back in 2005. He just looks so good. And even though he was great again, he wasn't the same great. And so his injury really could have propelled the Suns to some championships in that 7 seconds or less before they fell apart.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Dave Griffin, former Suns executive and now New Orleans Pelicans president of basketball operations, was on Twitter last night and actually was talking about that, how people forget how good Amari was, and without that injury, he's basically a lock as a Hall of Famer, and you look at it, and it's really true. I mean, how unbelievable he was prior to that injury, and he did come back and was still a great player, but he wasn't quite the same. He just did not have the same amount of explosiveness. That pick and roll with Nash before Amari's knee injury was deadly. Nobody could really stop that, and they were just scratching the surface when he missed a full season. That's the other thing. He missed a full year in the middle of the prime of that 7 seconds or less team, and that team still made it to the Western Conference Finals without him. Imagine what they could have done with him at full strength.
I tell you what, even that year, the Raja Bell injury is what actually eventually doomed him. When it was either Achilles or something like that in that conference finals against Dallas. Suns were up 1-0. Suns were up 1-0 when Raja, pulled that. It was a calf, I think it was, and he couldn't play again. You already were out Kurt Thomas and Amar Stoudemire, and then adding Raja Bell out. They couldn't make it through that conference final. So, yeah, there's a lot of heartbreak. But I think the Amari one is the one that would have been transcendent if he could have stayed healthy.
I still think we should have named this podcast Heartbreak Hotel. I think we had discussed that one because it's an old Al adage, but
yeah,
that's like the perfect thing for like every week.
Solar panels perfect. Yeah,
that's true, but everybody could have checked. Hey, Suns Jam Session, when you change your name again, Heartbreak Hotel. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Suns fans check into the Heartbreak Hotel on a regular basis.
To the Jammers. That's right.
All right. Rounding the show out. What are you guys into this week? Let's start with you, Greg.
What am I into this week? I am watching McMillions on HBO. It's a documentary series on how one guy scammed the old McDonald's Monopoly game. And basically every major prize in the late 90s when they ran that thing was illegitimately won by people this guy knew. So very interesting. And fun fact, Rhett Reese is actually working on a feature film version of this, I believe, with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. So another reason. But if you want to know the backstory, it's fascinating. I highly recommend that. I'm into that this week.
Dave.
I forgot about this segment. So let me try to remember what I've done this week. I got into that new show. I forget which channel it's on, but it's called Run. Domhnall Gleeson and this girl, they basically, after 15 years, they basically text each other to meet on this train. And they're just trying to catch up on what's happened in their lives since they last dated. It's quite an interesting little show. Otherwise, I'm just continuing the stuff I talked about last week because of those series. I love Westworld, even though it's crazy nuts. Better Call Saul, I'm really sad that one's over again for probably another 2 or 3 years. Sons of bitches. But no, I think I'm just trolling Netflix these days.
Run is another HBO show.
Is it?
Because every time.
I get it through the Hulu with the HBO extension. Okay.
Every time I go in the HBO app, I look at that one. I go, that might be the next one.
Actually, it's interesting. I mean, the girl looks like she'd be annoying as hell to watch all the time, but she's actually kind of endearing annoying, which is probably why they cast her. So it's pretty good.
I rented that new. It's just out on Amazon or whatever. That new Brad Pitt space movie.
Ad Astra?
Maybe that's what it was called. I'm a sucker for space films, dude. You give me a movie that takes place in space, and I'm going to watch it 10 times out of 10. But man, Brad Pitt used the same tone of voice, the same inflection, the entire movie.
Yes.
That's Brad Pitt.
So
not kidding.
Every
so
like beginning to end, the tone and pace of the movie and the narration never once changed.
Yeah, and that pace too. The one you're using. That's right.
Yes, the entire. It was like 2.5 hours.
Oh,
of course,
God.
It's a Friday night, and I'm quarantined, and I ain't got shit to do. So like, I'll finish the movie. But wow, that what a waste of. I mean, no wonder he always co-stars with people.
Have you guys watched the movie Yesterday? The one about the guy, something happens, everybody forgets the Beatles except this guy. I enjoyed it and hated it all at the same time. I
thought it was cute. I liked it. Yeah.
I had so many problems with it though. Like there were so many things that you go, what? No. I don't want to ruin it if anybody's going to rent it, but there were so many issues, especially when he meets a certain person in that, and it justifies his whole thing. The whole thing. There's so many problems with it. We never find out why everybody forgot about the Beatles except him.
And 2 other people in the world.
I'm sorry. No.
Look, it was a fluff piece, and it was cute, and it was fun to hear Beatles music being played as if it was being heard for the first time. So I thought that was a good premise, but yes, there were a few potholes or plot holes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those parts of it, Dave. But then the other half of me is like just screaming internally, going, "This makes no sense," which is probably what most people do when they watch most of this show. But yeah, that just drove me nuts this week. So maybe this segment becomes what you're into.
I don't envy you being stuck with Ad Astra, man. But I was in a theater watching it with my girlfriend, and we were both just, oh my God, this is so slow. When is this ending? Yeah.
Well, if you want to feel that way again, go watch a new Brad Pitt movie. All right. So on that note, it was a lot of fun, everybody. Thank you so much for waking up with us live every Saturday morning, Arizona time at 7 a.m. Or if you were listening on the podcast or watching the replay, regardless, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate you guys. My name is Sim Tompkins, Dave King, Mr. Greg Esposito. We will be back again next Saturday, 7 o'clock Arizona time.
Thanks, guys. Bye.